It is voting day. We're now almost 2 hours into the country going to the polls for the 2021 local government elections. And as promised, we've got wall-to-wall coverage for you. Our anchors and our reporters are around the country for you. In fact, South Africans casting their vote this morning. Tondani Takalani is our reporter who is in Pretoria for us for the latest on what's happening in a hotly contested Tshwane, and my co-anchor Ayanda Nytahi joining us live from Diepsloot in Soweto. Ayanda, I want to begin with you this morning because Soweto is such an incredibly important place insofar as the ANC campaign is concerned. It's where the ANC chose to wrap up its electioneering last week, with President Cyril Ramaphosa going there himself, getting quite a hostile reception. I think there's going to be a big focus this year on how many people actually turn up to vote, because people are saying no service delivery, no vote.
Absolutely, you're right, and you have touched on various issues which really stand out as soon as we arrived here in Ward 113. In fact, if you had crossed to us just minutes ago, it would be difficult for you to hear me because of the music, ironically, that actually came from an ANC who you described there, has fallen in some respects out of favor with many residents here in Diepsloot. Even just as we drove into the community itself, I mean, the kind of electioneering issues stand out and are completely unavoidable. In fact, despite the, call it, techniques of Kevin, our camera guy, we found ourselves also dipping into some potholes because there are just so many of them on the way here. And characteristic, really, of a place like Diepsloot, we also came across a lot of barricades, what looks like the debris from protest action that might have taken place. That, however, hasn't stopped the many people who've come through to this voting station here at the Diepsloot Community Hall to try cast their ballot. It also happens to be the area where we're expecting the IEC chair, Glenn Mashinini, to also arrive after inspecting how voting is taking place in Dainfern, which is just a 20 minutes drive from where we are. But I can tell you what, it's such a stark contrast to the lived reality of many people here. I spoke about those voters. Let me get you a sense of how things are looking by stepping out a shot while my colleague Kevin gets you a sense of how many people have actually rocked up here. Snaking queues, believe it or not, despite the sun and the impact it's having. I have found it so interesting to note that a lot of the people who've arrived here happen to be the elderly, not many young people being seen. And it also happens to be the case that it's mostly women who've walked up to cast their ballot here. But you're getting a sense, really, of just how long the queue is. And I imagine IEC officials and many other stakeholders who have an interest in seeing a robust election taking place would be pleased to see how many people have arrived, especially when you consider the fact that we've only seen voting taking place only for 2 hours. Or perhaps this is just the kind of show that arrives or that is evident with the start of an election, and things may perhaps calm down throughout the rest of the afternoon. But Diepsloot, as you've mentioned, certainly being an area worth watching, especially when you consider the focus that the ANC especially has had here. As you've mentioned, Cyril Ramaphosa certainly also not necessarily receiving the most warm welcome, and that is because there are long-standing issues that we've covered for such a long time around Diepsloot that, dare I add, remain largely unaddressed even on election day. You can imagine the kind of promises that people are making here. Several political parties having their tents up, I guess, in a last-ditch attempt to try to convince voters to either change their mind or to ensure that they actually continue with the, I guess, intentions that they have when it comes to which party they're going to vote for. But so far, inside, we've been told that it's all systems go. This station opened on time and there are no glitches. But I know the situation throughout the country may be different. In fact, let me take you to Tondani Takalani, my colleague, who's currently in the capital.
That's right, Ayanda. So we are at the Irene Primary School in Centurion. This is where ANC Women's League President Bathabile Dlamini is expected to cast a ballot, along with 6,000 others would-be voters who are registered to vote at this particular station. IEC officials telling us a little earlier on that this is one of the biggest voting station in terms of the number of people who are registered to vote. In fact, as I step out of shot to give you a bit of perspective, and I'm going to ask my colleague Njabulo Tele to walk with me as we show you the snaking queue of the will-be voters who are waiting here to cast their ballot. Some of them, despite assurances from the IEC officials that things are running quite smoothly, have become quite frustrated with the waiting. They say they've been, queuing for, about 2 hours or so. It's a turnout, quite an impressive turnout, which some of the senior politicians whom we've spoken to, have certainly not expected. But, you'll notice that despite the scorching sun, that is blazing here in Pretoria, nevertheless, people are patiently waiting to cast their ballot. I want to try and talk to some of them, if they will, for a moment. For how long have you been waiting to cast your ballot here, and how are things looking, really?
Yeah, it's been an hour and a half. Apparently there's only one classroom open, which is crazy for a district like this. The hall was apparently up for the voting location, but they changed it yesterday at the last minute, so I think it's crazy. We're waiting this long and also social distancing for COVID. One classroom is crazy. It's not very safe.
I mean, there are hundreds other potential voters in front of you. You say you've been waiting for almost 2 hours now. Any chance of giving up, or are you really going to, try and determine the future for your city?
Yeah, no, we've waited this long. I think we can stick it out a bit longer. I think people will come back. Hopefully they will come back, but we'll wait it out and see.
Thank you so much for your time. One potential voter there, despite what happens, he's going to stick it out and wait until he casts his ballot. So you'll notice that for about 200 meters going back, people are waiting they're queuing nonetheless to cast their ballot here at the Irene Primary School in Pretoria. Michelle?
Tondani Takalani, thanks very much indeed for that update. Very worrying there indeed. That one voter telling Tondani that the venue was changed at the last minute. They're now using one classroom for that area. It's certainly something that we need to investigate. He's live to us there from Pretoria, along with my co-anchor, Ayanda Nytahi, who is live to us this morning from Diepsloot in Soweto. Thanks very much indeed to you both.